Let's see. Try it now. Perfect.
Can you still see me?
I can't. You're not John Cena.
Oh,
That's staying in.
I
That's staying in,
moved.
by the way.
God damn it!
We're
I
not cutting that
moved
out.
my screen around, so I'm not looking at myself and distracted the whole time.
Yeah, it's the worst. And welcome everyone to the Unfiltered Sports Network. My name is Fernando, aka the Lone Star Halo, joined here by William Cannoli. He decided to go all in on the name.
Absolutely.
And for the record, he's Italian, so he can say that. He's a big Daniel Tosh fan, and Daniel Tosh always used to say, if you think that's racist, it's because you're racist. And we're rolling with that here. So today's episode is actually a topic that William came up with, and it's root for anyone but the home team. So William and I grew up in San Diego. We met in middle school, and I think our stories were similar. Where I don't know if you want to say that William was a Padres fan, but he was at
Oh
least a
yeah.
Padres. So you were okay.
Oh yeah.
So yeah, and I grew up a Padres fan as well. For me, the Angels were always the second fiddle team. And then eventually the tides kind of shifted. And for you, you were a Padres fan. And then a specific trade happened, tides shifted for you, and that's no pun
Well,
intended.
there's actually a little more to it than that. It was because they were the first little league team I played for, so it was the Ramona Orioles, and my younger brother loved the hat. He loved the bird, so they were always my second team from that point, from when the time I was 4 years old. But until the trades and everything that started happening, Padres were way up here, and the Orioles were like, I don't think I've ever watched them on TV until that trade started happening. But for sure they were around. I was been a fan of them since I was about 4.
Okay, perfect. So we'll get a little bit more into those stories. Before we get into everything, make sure you like, comment, subscribe, all that fun stuff, share, even though nobody ever shares anything. Who are we kidding? But either way, subscribe, hit the like button. You can do all that kind of stuff. And let us know if you guys have any topics you want us to talk about in the future. So let's get down to the nitty gritty. Like I said, growing up in San Diego, especially in our era, the Padres and not the Chargers. The Chargers were pretty good while we were growing up. You know, they had LaDainian Tomlinson, they had Drew Brees. This was right when the whole Eli Manning draft thing had happened, when we were really coming to our formative years. So the Chargers weren't necessarily bad, but the Padres were. The only benefit they'd had is that William and I got to see the tail end of Tony Gwynn's
Hmm.
career. You know, we were both pretty young to remember the World Series run the Padres went on in '98. I mean, I was 3, you were what, 2?
I was probably like 2.5 at that point, but I actually did get to go to one of those games.
Oh, well, there you go. There you go. Yeah,
Yep.
because I know your dad, I think he's shown me photos, I believe.
Yeah, my mom and my aunt got tickets somehow, and so there I was, not even 3 yet, and yeah, I'm at a World Series game.
Well, that's something that nobody else in San Diego has been able to say since. So take that for what it's worth.
Yep.
So I go ahead a little bit more into your story. So you kind of gave the background of it, but what was it really for you where you were like, okay, you know what? I'm done supporting the Padres. I'm going to go all in the Orioles.
So both for the football and baseball side of things, it all came down to the fan base around the teams, not even the teams so much themselves. Because I know it's a business. You can't keep Trevor Hoffman forever, especially when he's blowing some saves. You got to deal what you got to do, right? LT was getting older. He had an injury. There's always a chance he's never going to recover. I, from the beginning, was against that opinion. I'm sure you remember me talking about that at school, but I can see how, you have to do what you think is best for yourself. So again, I understand and I don't blame the teams entirely for doing what they did, but I remember all the fans having such backlash for both those players. And like you said, LT and Tony Gwynn, we both got to witness play. We both were supporting them for a long time, and both of them didn't really get a great send off. Tony Gwynn did much better than LT, obviously, but Tony didn't get what I thought he deserved, and I still don't think he gets the recognition that he did,
You mean
regardless
Trevor?
of what team. No, I'm talking about Tony.
Oh, good.
Yeah. Then with the Trevor thing, nobody in San Diego had anything nice to say about. I remember coming to school, running a little bit late like usual, and we're with Dad listening to Scott and BR, and on Trevor, they just called him washed up. I mean, they talked to him or they talked about him the way you would expect, like I guess the best analogy I can think of is of a Ukrainian person talking about Putin. I mean, it was so negative, and I couldn't believe what I was hearing. It was so upsetting, and that is really what sealed the deal for me. So again, I know the Padres had to do what they had to do, but the fan base just completely turned me off.
Yeah, so I'll chime in a little bit on the Trevor Hoffman send off because that one I remember vivid. By the time Tony Gwynn retired, was it 01, 02? It was that year.
It was after 01.
So I only ever got to see him in person, I think, play twice at Qualcomm Stadium, and that was one of the last years Qualcomm was around. We've already committed to doing a
Well,
Qualcomm Stadium episode
it
in the
was one of
future.
the last years it was around for the Padres, but it still existed for a
Correct.
long time after that.
Yeah, but after that, that's when it really started to go to disrepair. Once the Padres moved out, the Chargers didn't take care of it at all, and you can forget about the city of San Diego pumping a dime into that place. Really, really went into disrepair after that, and I know you'll agree with that for sure. But yeah, Trevor Hoffman, I remember that send off. Same thing. My dad used to listen to Scott and BR. He used to listen to Hacksaw every single morning. When he dropped me off or picked me up from from school as well. And I used to really enjoy listening to sports stuff because a lot of their takes back then were really good. I used to really like the Mighty 1090 because they were super unbiased about covering sports. One of the things I hate about the Angels right now is that they have this very, very state-run media. Nobody can say anything bad about the organization or anything. But because the Padres didn't own Mighty 1090, Scott and BR were always unfiltered when it came to the Padres. They were never afraid to say, hey, this team sucks. So I did like that. But the problem is, back in those days, the Padres sucked a lot.
Yeah.
And I'll get to that right now when I talk about mine. But Trevor Hoffman leaving was definitely a punch in the gut. More so because the ownership didn't want to keep him around. A guy like Trevor Hoffman, yes, near the end of his Padres career, he was certainly not the pitcher and the closer that he was, 2004, 2005, those days. I get it. But when you have a franchise piece like Trevor Hoffman, let alone one of the greatest closing pitchers of all time, and honestly, I'm willing to fight most people. Trevor Hoffman, I think, was a better closer than Mariano Rivera.
Yeah, I
Difference
agree.
is Mariano Rivera, played on some of the greatest teams of all time, right?
Exactly.
He played on the Yankees. Would Trevor Hoffman has been as good on the Yankees? Yeah, maybe, because he played on some crappy Padres teams.
Exactly.
Honestly,
Exactly.
some of the worst baseball teams ever fielded, Hoffman was on those, and so was Tony Gwynn, in all fairness. So I think it's a very unfair comparison. Either way, we're comparing, Trevor Hoffman and a guy like Mariano Rivera. Both guys only had one pitch. Hoffman had a changeup and basically just a changeup that was called a fastball that was like 3 miles an hour fastball or faster. And then you had Mariano Rivera who had a cutter and then just different variations of that cutter.
Oh my God, it's crazy.
Yeah. So for me, the real turning point, yours was a couple of trades and the way that the fan base turned you off by, dumping LT. That's why you weren't a Chargers fan anymore. And then, forgetting guys like Hoffman and not giving them the respect they deserve. For me, it was the fact that, you know me, growing up, I always wanted to be different. Everybody else like this, I like that. And you were the same way. And I think that's why we gelled near the end of middle school there. But for me, it was the fact that the Angels were spending money and nobody else was. And when we went to a game, you went to one of my first Angels games with me because I went in 2005 and then 2010, but then I went with you in 2014.
Yep.
And when we went, like, the people cared about what was going on. And that's what I really hated about going to Padres games. When you went, nobody cared. Nobody watched the game. Nobody was wearing Padre stuff. Nowadays, that's why it pisses me off so much to go to Petco Park. You go to Petco Park now, everyone has everyone had a Juan Soto jersey. Obviously, probably not anymore. But knowing Padres fans are going to keep wearing that for
Oh
the next
yeah.
50
I've
years.
still seen them at my work recently.
Yeah, I'm sure. People wear Machado jerseys, people wear Tatis jerseys. But, in 2004, 5, 6, 7, 8, when the team sucked, 2012, when they had Ryan Schimpf, when they had those kind of guys, you wouldn't be caught dead seeing people wearing Padres stuff.
No.
Maybe a shirt, a Padres shirt. They got a
Yeah, the
JC Penney.
giveaway shirt.
Yeah, exactly. The giveaway hoodies, the giveaway hats. But like when you went to games, realistically, what? Like 30 to 40% of people wore actual jerseys?
I don't know if it's that high.
Yeah, I mean, there was a time, man. Like I'm serious. And I think that the Padres kind of made it worse, at least for catering to the casual fans once they moved to Petco, because the tickets were so cheap, right? Because then it really became a social thing. You had the gas lamp quarter there. You had tickets that you can get to the park at the park for $5. I remember going to Park in the Park with my dad for $5 when good teams came to town.
Yeah.
And that was the other thing. Growing up in San Diego, you didn't go to watch the Padres. We went to go watch Albert Pujols play the Cardinals. You know what I mean? My dad was like, "Hey, Pujols is coming to town. Let's go." Hey, this guy's coming to town. Let's go. It
For
wasn't.
us,
Oh, good.
for us, Ken Griffey Jr. on the Reds.
Yep. I watched Ken Griffey Jr. play, but also a lot of the times they used to host Little League games whenever the Reds or the Cubs would come to town, and I'm sure you remember that.
I actually don't remember that.
No, you guys never went to like the Little League games?
We went on Little League night where, we were all excited to wear our uniforms, but I don't think I ever went to any of the games.
Okay, so you never got to go like to the games where it was like a Sunday morning or whatever, and you got to like walk on the field like along like the warning track there.
I remember walking on the field, but that was for a different event. I don't think I ever did that one.
Okay, yeah, and I mean, I remember going for the God, what do they call it? The Fan Fest. It's just Fan Fest. The Angels call it Moving Day, but yeah, the Padres always called it Fan Fest, and it was always empty. There was like never anybody there, and I'm sure you saw in the news last year, the Fan Fest was like a capacity for the Padres.
I actually didn't see that. But you know what? To be fair to the San Diego fan base, because I'm going to hate on them a lot because I still genuinely do. The first fan fest after the Chargers left, they did pack the house, and that was when we had freaking Derek Norris and Matt Kemp as the two stars. So
Hey, Derek Norris was pretty
volumes.
good his
Yeah,
first
he was
year,
my favorite.
2015.
Norris Rex, and then he
Don't
took out
remember
his
anyone calling
frustrations
him
on
that.
his wife. So you don't remember that?
I don't know. I don't remember anyone calling him Norris Rex, and I don't remember the domestic violence thing. I remember Brian Giles getting popped for that.
Yep. No, that was why Padres cut ties with him finally. But no, always in right field about the third deck, there'd be a group of fans that had Norrisaurus Rex with the freaking green T-Rex with his face plastered over it on a banner.
Oh, that's horrible.
Yeah, it really was.
My favorite thing was back when Jake Peavy was pitching, and hey, Jake Peavy, still to this day, one of my all-time favorite players. Great Padre, great dude. I feel really bad for him because I don't know if you remember that story that came out a couple years ago that his agent completely screwed him over and he went bankrupt because of his agent. He was like secretly taking money from him. Same thing happened to Tony Gwynn, actually.
That's crazy. Imagine, we all know he's going to have cancer from his tobacco. Imagine not having any of the money on top of all that other problems, and that's terrible. It doesn't deserve that.
Well, the good news for him is I think that now he's working for like MLB Network, so at least he's like in a stable situation, and he still pitches once in a while for the Savannah Bananas. I don't know if you've gotten to see that.
I didn't know I've seen Jackie has shown me a few videos, but I hadn't seen him there.
Yes, yeah. So whenever because now they're going like these world tours. So I believe that one time they went to Alabama to Mobile, where like Jake Peavy lives. I don't know if he still lives there, but he was living there, and he pitched for them. Yeah, right. He pitched, I think, 2 games for them, and he used his actual Rawlings Gold Glove that they gave him when he pitched. And I'm just like, that's awesome.
That's pretty cool.
Yeah, I'm sure you can find photos and videos for sure. Yeah, because when it happened, it was all over social media, and I'm like, that's badass. Yeah, That's another guy who left a bad taste in my mouth. The Padres traded him to the White Sox for Clayton Richard. Now, the only good news is that Clayton Richard was at least decent his first stint with the Padres.
Okay, hold on. He
Uh,
was decent by Padre standards. By the league
let me
standards, was he that decent?
let's see. I'm gonna look up his numbers while we're talking because
I remember watching him get consistently raked. And I know that Rockies did a lot of that, but I remember one time it was 7-0 and they had only 2 outs and they ended up pulling him.
yeah, so his numbers weren't nearly as good as I remember. So he had a career WAR of 1.2, which is god awful for a guy who played more than like a year. He was 69, all right, and 84. He had an ERA of 4.51 for his
Yeah.
career. So
Honestly, that's a little bit better than I remembered.
yeah, that's fair. I mean, he had a couple years here that were decent. So in 2010, that was his first legitimate chance with the Padres. He had a short one in 2009, but 2010 he was 14-9 with a 3.75 ERA. That's not bad.
That's not terrible.
Yeah, and then his other, what's his other, like, I'm trying to find another decent campaign he had. 2012, 14-14 with a 3.99 ERA. Besides that, everything was like in the fours.
But you said that was 2010, right?
2012. 2010 was that first one where he was 14-9 with the 3.75 ERA. But
So
2010,
3.7, but what was the league average in ERAs?
oh, yeah, that's I'd have to look that up individually.
That's what
But
I'm see if I can
I'm sure
find
you
that.
remember the 2010 Padres were actually pretty decent. That was the year they traded for Ryan Ludwig um, at the trade deadline, and they were really close to making the playoffs. It came down to the very last game of the year against the Giants. I don't know if you remember that. And that was when Matt Latos was at his peak before he decided to take his frustrations out on his wife.
Yeah, the Padres got a quite a roster of those guys. So
Yeah,
the
that's
average
fair.
2010 was 407. So I guess he
Okay,
was a
so
little bit below average or
well,
above
I mean
average, whatever you want to say.
3.75 ERA, and you said 4.07
Yeah,
was the
he
average?
was better than average, but the numbers lower. So
Yeah, that's fair. But so I mean, that's really what it was for me. That kind of drove me away from being a Padres fan. I was never a Chargers fan. I
yeah,
was, I guess you would say, a Chargers sympathizer. I got invited. I don't know if you remember the triplets who were at our school in 2007 for the Chargers versus Patriots. I think it was the what game was it in the playoffs? Was it the conference? The conference championship? They could have made it to the Super Bowl if they would have beat the Patriots that year.
I don't remember, but I know that game very well. That game lives in my head and in my heart. I was
Was that the
never a
Nate Caden
Chargers
game?
fan. I don't remember that part, but I remember the celebration that the Patriots disrespected the Chargers helmet and LT went over and started fist fighting them. And then he got revenge because he got to disrespect the Patriots logo when they beat him with the Jets. So those two moments are very strong in my memory.
And the other thing I want to say is your dad was a hardcore Charger fan at one point.
Yeah.
I
Yeah, he
remember
definitely
that.
was.
And then I think for him, the straw that broke the camel's back was also the LT thing, right? Because
Yeah.
I remember him getting a Jets LT jersey
Yep.
and him going hardcore on the Jets. I mean, I don't want to call it the bandwagon because he did join because of him. So I don't really
Right.
call that a bandwagon fan. Following his favorite player, he was really excited because his first 2 years they also made the AFC Championship, if I
Yep.
remember correctly.
LT had a great season that first year. But
Yeah, and
so
sort of the Sanchez. Don't forget about him.
yeah, no, I wasn't gonna mention him. Um, but my dad left Chargers fan base because LT, and I left the Padres because of Trevor. I mean, that was really the final one. And I don't know if I ever told you this personally yet, but I got to tell Trevor exactly that. I
Oh,
won't say how I met him, but I got to meet him in a very private setting, and I wore an Orioles hat. And he's all, "Hey man, what the hell is that about?" And I'm like, "Well, actually, it's because I didn't like how they treated you." And he said, "Oh, that pissed you off a little bit, did it?" I'm like, "Yes, it did." And I followed you to the Brewers. I don't know if you remember, but I was actually a Brewers fan for the 2 seasons that he was there. And then when he left, I was still planning on staying with the Brewers, but it's weird to be, what were we, 12 at the time and
Yeah,
supporting a beer team that's all about beer.
that's
So
right.
that was why I made the switch to the Orioles. But yeah, it was really cool getting to tell Trevor that and being like, yeah, man, I can't believe they did that to you.
Weren't you and I at Petco Park? I don't know if this isn't the time you're alluding to, but weren't you and I at Petco Park once? And he just
Yes,
randomly walked by us, and we were like, "Oh my God, that's Trevor Hoffman."
it wasn't random. We were there for the 2016 Future All Stars game, and you and I spotted him before everybody else, and you and I were the first ones there.
Was that for the Futures game? I thought it was for something
Yes.
else.
No, it was for the Futures game.
So we were with my dad.
Yep. It was the
Okay,
Futures and then the Celebrity All Star game later in the night, but
that
he
was
was there
fun.
for the Futures. That was a great
Okay,
time.
that was
But
fun.
if
Well,
you remember, you and I are first two on the scene. Nobody else is even clued in that this man exists yet. And he starts signing with our Sharpie, and he left with our Sharpie.
I remember that. Well,
We specifically went to go buy new Sharpies, and he took it.
yeah, and that was the one we had to buy there. So those were like $6 because they had him in that little stand right there
Yep.
next to the Tony Gwynn statue, if memory serves correctly.
You know they're moving the statue.
Yes, I heard that. They're redoing that entire area, right?
Yeah, so now you cannot go see the statue unless you pay for a ticket.
Where is it going to now?
It's from what I understand, I could be wrong. It's going to be in the same spot. It's just that spot is going to be basically in a new platform, and it's not accessible to the public. It's only to people that are paying to be in there.
Oh, so it's almost like a little like suite, quote unquote, if you will.
Kind of
That's
less
stupid.
nice though. Yeah,
I've got
I
no
don't like it at
problem
all.
with them having like a Tony Gwynn suite party area, whatever. Actually, now that I think about it, that's kind of degrading. Hey, let's all get drunk with the Tony statue.
Yeah, I'm not a fan.
Is the Trevor Hoffman one still going to be there where you can take photos next to the Hall of
Not
Fame?
sure. Not
Okay.
sure.
That's what they should have moved the Tony Gwynn statue. Move them both there. Like I like it in the outfield because even MLB the Show, if you're playing, you can see it out there, which I like.
Yeah.
I think it would make more sense next to the Hall of Fame, the Padres Hall of
Yeah.
Fame there. And I will say that the Padres Hall of Fame area is one of the coolest thing in all of sports. There's not a lot of teams that have a Hall of Fame area. Now, Camden Yards does it right because they have their little version of Monument Alley there, or whatever.
Yeah.
What do they call theirs?
I don't remember right now off the top of my head.
Okay, yeah, I know at Yankee Stadium they call it Monument Valley. And by the way, Yankee Stadium, very disappointing. It's
That's good to
not
hear.
great. It's not great. Obviously, as a baseball fan, you do have to go. But, I've been at 18 stadiums now. And when I think of like my top 3 or 5, Yankee Stadium isn't even close to like cutting the list.
Yeah.
Camden Yards, though, is arguably 1 or 2. I change my mind all the time. It's between that and Chorus for my favorite so far.
Really? Have you been to PNC Park?
I have not.
That's what one that's supposed to compete. Like every
Everyone says that's
expert,
arguably the best one.
yeah, every expert analysis usually has it. PNC Park, Camden.
Yeah, so I think honestly, I think PNC might be last. I think like I want to end it, like if that's the consensus
Yeah,
best
that's a good
stadium,
idea.
I think I need to save that one for last. That way I could
Yeah,
appreciate it for what it is.
yeah.
But honestly, I've never been to a baseball stadium had a bad time. Like even like Tropicana Field, I'm like, yeah, this place sucks.
I
But
think you got to be one of the only people alive that said you had a decent time at Tropicana.
I appreciate it for what it is. And think about it. It's the only baseball stadium you can pet a stingray. I mean, hey, that counts for something. Okay.
It can't be a stingray. It's got to be a bat ray, right?
Well, I mean, bat rays and stingrays the bigger species,
Yeah,
and then the bat ray is the subspecies.
yeah. Honestly, there's no way they can have a tank big enough for the stingrays.
It's not a manta ray, no. No, they have those at the Georgia Aquarium though, and you can pay to swim with them, which I mean, that's
That is
bonkers.
insane.
Yeah, that's bonkers. Um, but yeah, perhaps maybe one day we can do another topic where I talk about baseball stadiums. Now that I think 18, I've been to quite a few. Surprisingly, I haven't gone to Houston yet. That's like 4 hours away, and I go to Houston on work trips.
Well, that's
So
supposed to be one of the bottom five stadiums.
yeah, people say it's not that great. Well, I
Yeah.
was gonna go last year, but one of my buddies was in their AAA, was with their AAA affiliate, and I was
Oh,
like,
cool.
well, I'm gonna wait until he gets promoted, and then I'm gonna go down there just to make it a little more special, right? But he got shelled one outing, gave up 6 runs after having like a one
Bummer.
point something ERA.
Bummer.
He got
That really
shelled
sucks.
and they cut him. It was that one bad
Oh,
outing, and I swear to God, look at the numbers. Ty Buttrey. It was one bad outing and they shelled him. They're like, he's done.
that sucks.
Yeah, but that's a future plug. If you guys want to listen, he talked about that on our Halos in the Infield, the Ty Buttrey interview that's coming, I think, next week. Once Pitchers and Catchers report, we're going to release that interview. But yeah, the Padres, going back to that, because I really can't talk too much about the Chargers. Like I told you guys, I was raised a Broncos fan, so I was never really a Charger fan. Maybe that's where you can come in. What was it that made you a Chargers fan growing up? Was it literally just the fact that they were in San Diego?
So yeah, I think I was never really big on the Chargers. Like I was definitely a Padres fan. But to be fair, starting out, five under, the reason I didn't like the Chargers is because they had a stupid ass name. I mean, seriously, I couldn't get behind it. The lightning bolt's a decent logo, but I didn't really like the dark blue uniforms that they had. When they went to the powder blue, I loved those. I still think those are great jerseys. Um, but then also the mascot is Boltman, and that is one of the
I mean,
worst
he's not an official
designs.
mascot, right? It's almost like the rally monkey. It's not an official
No,
mascot,
he's
but
there. He's there at the games, or at least he was when they were in San Diego. I can't speak
I,
about now.
I think it was still going when they were in Carson.
Oh my god, it's so stupid.
Yeah.
I don't think we even have to expand on that. It's just so stupid.
Yeah, yeah, that's fair.
But yeah, same thing there is just I never really felt the connection to them. They always felt like they're never gonna do anything. I mean, when you have that realization when you're five, it's pretty crazy. Like I said, I got to go to a World Series game for the Padres, so there was still some hope. Even when Sean Burrows was there was still some hope, even though it was
Hey,
really
I don't hate
small.
Sean Burrows as much as some Padres fans do. I thought he was decent. I really do. Fight me.
Oh man, he was my favorite player just because he was 23. I knew nothing about him, but he was wearing number or 32, and I really liked that. And he played third base, which is where I always played. And I remember everybody screaming at him, saying, "You fucking suck!" Man." I was like 7, and I was like, "Oh, I like him," but I didn't have any reason to like him.
Well, so what I always liked about Sean Burrows is the guy always played hard. There's a lot of athletes that like mailed it, right? Like, and I remember Sean Burrows always running hard, but I just think he was a disappointment in terms of his prospect value. For me, I
Well, he
always
was on
liked
drugs,
Khalil.
so
Yeah, that's fair. I mean, the guy was
that
literally
didn't help.
found like homeless in Las Vegas afterward doing speedballs behind a dumpster, which gnarly story.
Yeah,
Check that out. I know ESPN did a lot of like video documentaries about him and his comeback. So I don't know much about what he's doing these days, but I hope for his sake he's doing well because he always seemed like a good guy. Um, Speaking of guys who weren't doing well, so Khalil Green, he was one of my favorite guys.
yeah,
Jake Peavy was always my favorite. Trevor Hoffman was right up there too, and then Khalil Green, a guy who just couldn't handle being in the spotlight. But one thing I'll definitely say about the Padres, they always had these guys that had so much potential. You already mentioned Sean Burrows. That was one of those guys. You had your Scott Harrison, your Will Venables, they traded for Cameron Maybin and Khalil Green. These guys had all the potential in the world, and that's all we ever heard about in San Diego. Hey, these guys are going to be something. These guys are going to be something. But the Padres never really seemed to develop those guys and get them to the next level. And that's where a team like the Angels for me did. Right back then, when Disney had originally sold the team to Artie Moreno, they still had these young pieces that they were developing successfully. So you had the Padres that couldn't do that, or they did develop them. Adrian Gonzalez, um, got Chase Headley, Nick Hundley to an extent. These are guys who were developed properly, but as soon as the iron got hot, they traded these guys away. And
yeah,
that was really what turned me off. And I know that's what you're
yeah.
going to say too. I mean, you had alluded to Ramon Hernandez being one of those guys, right?
Yeah, and they didn't even trade him. They just cut him.
Yeah,
They
yeah,
could
they
have at least
released
got
him.
something.
Yeah, yeah, they
Yeah,
released him
and
and
he
he
went
wanted
to
the
the
Orioles.
Orioles and had a really good season. And
Yep.
then after that, I believe he ended up on the Dodgers for a while and had good seasons there.
I don't remember him going to the Dodgers or where he went after the Orioles, but I definitely
I know
remember him
for
going to the
sure he
Orioles.
went to the Dodgers after the Orioles. I just can't remember if that was his best year or not. But definitely was better than whoever we brought in after that as catcher. I think it was Hundley.
Yeah, well, Hundley was traded, or sorry, Hundley was drafted.
So
I was
maybe
getting
that's
a
why they
call.
cut him. They just didn't want to pay him and they had Huntley in the system. But yeah,
Mhm.
like you said, our entire lives, every single year, true or not, oh, the Padres have the best farm team in all of baseball. Every single year. Every year. I mean, I feel like there's never been a time where the Padre fans didn't say that. And I don't think it's ever been true once.
Well, it was never true where they were able to successfully make these guys major leaguers and then win with them. Because even this
Yeah.
time, so it was what, 2022, the Padres faced the Phillies for the chance to go to the World Series, right? It was the NLCS. And almost none of those guys were developed. Tatis, I'll give it to them. Yeah, they traded for him for James Shields, but I'll give it to them. He was like, what, 17 or 18 when they got him? So, okay, we'll give him that. They developed him. Um, Juan Soto, obviously, they're trading for him. Ha-Seong Kim, they signed him. Jake Cronenworth, they got him from the Rays. Trent Grisham from the Brewers. Nobody on this Padres team from that potential World Series run in 2022 was homegrown, really.
Yeah.
Same thing when we were growing up. They never had any deep playoff runs. We all we ever heard was about the potential of these guys. One of the biggest names that comes up for childhood Fernando was Luis Durango. I had his rookie card, and I was like, I saw him play in Lake Elsinore. I was like, this guy is going to be so good. Suck ass.
Well, what
Suck
about Matt
ass.
Bush?
Yeah. No.
So
Didn't he
that's
just win
another
a World
thing.
Series? I think he was on the
I
Rangers.
I don't want to know if that's true.
Yeah. One of this guy I played like semi-pro baseball with. He played with Matt Bush. They were both in Mission Bay. The Pirates, I think the high school is.
Yeah,
Yeah, they're on the same team.
that's crazy. Yeah, but no, that was another thing. I don't know if you know or not, but you know that the Padres had first round pick, and you know who they passed up on for Matt Bush?
Well, Matt Bush was the first overall pick, right?
Yep. But do you know
Okay.
who they passed up on?
No,
Verlander.
that's funny. He was drafted in what, 2004?
I believe it was either at the latest it was six, but I think it was five.
Okay, I'm gonna look this up right
You
now.
might be right. It might be four. Four, five,
Yeah,
six,
so it
all
is
believe.
2004. Okay, yeah, so you're right. So number one was Matt Bush. Number two was Justin Verlander.
Tigers.
Yep, yep. Which I mean, that's crazy, but I mean, it's obviously such a crapshoot anyway, right?
Okay,
Um,
so hold on. Put a
okay.
pin in that. I will agree with you. Most of the times it is a crapshoot. However, I also got to meet Merv Rudderman, who was a player on many World Series teams, and then a coach. He was a batting coach for the 98 Padres, and then he was actually one of the coaches on the Tigers in 2004. So I got to speak to him about that. And he said to me that when they were in the room thinking about who they're going to pick, they're like, okay, Verlander's off the table. Everybody knows he's talented. There's zero chance in hell the Padres don't pick him up. And then as soon as they saw Matt Bush, they scrambled and they're like, okay, Verlander, no question. So they knew damn well at minimum he's gonna pan out to be something okay. So I hearing that only just solidified my disappointment in all those years back then struggling.
That's fair. So here I looked through the first round. Here's some other guys who they could have gotten. These are all first rounders. Okay, so Homer Bailey pitched two no hitters for the Reds. Okay, so they could have had him. Neil Walker, Jared Weaver,
Oh
Billy
wow.
Butler, Stephen Drew. And keep in mind, these are only the guys who panned out successfully in the
Right.
first round that year. Phil Hughes. That one, some people might not know, but he was a very successful Yankee for a long time. Um, and then if you wanted to go to the supplemental draft, which is still round one technically, J.P. Howe, Where was the other one? Houston Street. All of those are guys who they could have drafted in the first round. All would have been more successful than Matt Bush.
Well, and that's the other thing is that Merv told me that so they knew Verlander was off the table. I forget who they were going to pick second, but like they had the second choice, and they said, they believed that second was almost as good as Verlander, and they believed that they had, I think he told me 25 options that they expect, not the Padres in general, but just the league to pick before Matt Bush, and they thought, somebody's got to be pranking them. There's no way Verlander's still available for them.
Yeah, that's funny. And I mean, Verlander's obviously gone on to be a future Hall of Famer, and I don't think there's
Yeah,
much of a doubt about it.
yeah.
And his wife's also a future Hall of Famer. So
Who's his wife?
Kate Upton.
Oh, that's right. That's right.
Yeah. So all right. So what else do you have on this topic? I mean,
Well, I think another thing is, you know, we didn't like the trades. We don't like the fan base. I mean, I don't think I've ever liked San Diego fan base. I'm still
never.
a huge fan of the goals, and that's minor league hockey, but the fan base is just as bad as it ever was for the Padres and Chargers. And the Padres fans, especially the current generation, I feel like none of them are from San Diego. The way they behave, they're all East Coast fans, man. The stadium has become just as hostile as anywhere else, except for maybe Dodger Stadium. Maybe I'll give them a number one slot. But also, like I was telling you privately, there's no way anybody that's a fan now, anybody wearing a jersey at the park today, they cannot tell you who the hell Derek Norris was or fucking Travis Janikowski. I bet a few of them, if they can get anybody from that 2016 roster, maybe they'll get Amarista just because he was such a huge fan
You
favorite.
mean the little
But
ninja?
yes, I do.
Man, do you remember when he used to come in? They put a little highlight reel, little ninja, and it would just be like him, like sliding or whatever.
I remember a
By the
bunch of
way,
fans.
Alexei Marisa came from the Angels. They traded him for Ernesto Frieri, if you remember him or that
I
trade.
don't actually remember him off the top of my head. I don't. But yeah, I remember they would bring up little cardboard cutouts of a ninja with his face on it. That was so terrible, man. If I was him personally and I saw that, I don't care if a little kid made it. I'm not taking that nickname anymore. That
Yeah,
ruined it.
that's fair. Yeah, I mean, it's just there was such a history of failure
Yeah.
with being a Padres fan that like, and it wasn't even that. It was just they had seemingly no commitment to the fans and the organization. It was a minor league system for every other team, right? It
Yeah.
was essentially the Oakland A's, right? Like if you watch Moneyball. But the difference is the Oakland A's always had a plan, and the Oakland A's were making playoff runs consistently back in the Moneyball era. The Padres weren't doing that.
Yeah.
They had Adrian Gonzalez, traded him to the Red Sox. They had Anthony Rizzo, and they also had Pete Alonso. They picked Pete Alonso over Anthony Rizzo and traded Anthony Rizzo to the Chicago Cubs for Andrew Cashner. Andrew Cashner, for me, was really what turned the tide to like that's when the mediocre trades really started.
Yeah.
And because they just kept him around. And that's what I hated. That was another era. Like Padres would just keep trashy players around, and they would consistently let go of the players who had productive seasons. For instance, like I was a big fan of Mark Sweeney growing up. Mark Sweeney was a great pinch hitter, one of literally the best baseball MLB pinch hitters of all time. But he was great off the bench, and they couldn't even keep him around for like a $2 million contract.
That is,
Mike Cameron, they didn't keep him around. He was great.
yeah. Yeah, I loved Mike. I remember we were at the game. I think I've told you this before. We were at the game where he freaking busted his shoulder trying to make a catch on the wall. And it's like, man, you think about Padre outfielders and you think about all the names, but two very recent. You flash up Mike Cameron, who literally throws himself to make sure he makes the catch, that dedicated, injures himself, compared to Matt Kemp, who literally, one of my good friends, born in a wheelchair, told me, man, even I could have caught that fucking ball.
Yeah, I never liked Matt Kemp. But now, don't get
No.
me wrong. In 2015, because like I already stated, like 2012, 2014 is really when the switch happened for me. That's when I was like, okay, I'm gonna be an Angels fan now. They're doing something over there. I mean, and they were consistently making the playoffs. I liked the Angels growing up because Angels in the outfield. They were owned by Disney, so I liked all that. They were the team up north, and nobody that I knew liked the Angels, so I always wanted to be different. So they were always my second favorite team. But like I said, this switch happened. But in 2015, I was excited because the Angels were still projected to be good because they were the best team, regular season team in baseball in 2014. So, I mean, I didn't expect them to take that big of a step back in 2015, but they did. And also, if you remember in 2015, the Padres went all in. That was AJ Preller's first year. They got
Well,
Matt Camp, they got Justin Upton, they got Derek North, they got Craig Kimbrell, they got James Shield. The
Yonder
Padres
Alonso.
they had Yonder Alonso already, didn't they?
Oh, did they? Maybe that was the first year I was really aware of him.
Okay. Yeah, they'd had him already, for my understanding. Because remember, they picked him over Rizzo.
Yeah, I guess that makes sense. Yeah, but yeah, I remember
Uh,
that team well. But
yeah.
I always
And
thought,
they got
even
Will
back
Myers
then,
too.
we don't need to bring up White Queso.
Hey,
Um,
still one of my all-time favorite players, even though he was an asshole to me at spring training in 2018.
oh man. Anyway, I always thought, even back then, that there was way too much hype around that team. I mean, on paper, I can see how the last few Padres seasons hadn't looked as promising as that one, so I can understand that, but I never believed that they were actually putting in that much effort. I mean, again, I really liked Derek Norris. He was my favorite player on the Padres for those, 3 years, but he really wasn't that good. I mean, he was pretty good defensively, but he was batting worse than Chris Davis was. All right, you gotta keep that in mind.
Let's see. I'm looking up. I want to look up his stats right now. He's only 34, so I mean, if he was that good, he would still be playing. He's a career 230 batter, and he made the All-Star game one time in 2014 for Oakland.
I was gonna say there's no way he made it for the Padres.
So his career as a Padre, he batted 222, hit 28 home runs, and had an on-base percentage of 283. That is horrendous
Yeah.
on all fronts.
And whatever his last year was it 2017 maybe with the
Uh,
Padres?
2017, he was with the Tampa Bay Rays. He was only with the
Okay.
Padres in 15 and 16.
So in 16, right before the All-Star break, he was batting 102. I remember for a fact because we were talking about it, and I was like, dude, I don't think I've ever seen a professional with that low of numbers. He probably picked it up at the end of the year, but yeah,
He ended
I
up
can't
batting
believe
186
that.
by the end of it, so that's not much better.
I mean, if you're down at 102 to get almost to 200, that's a decent comeback. But yeah,
That's fair.
that's unbelievable.
The comeback of comebacks. Well, it's funny. We talk about these guys, and earlier we were talking about Tony Gwynn. Could you imagine, dude? Tony Gwynn would be turning in his grave 186. I mean, the guy was a 300 hitter. So, I mean, but it's also a much different era of baseball, So, I mean, it's kind of unfair to compare a guy. But it's so crazy to me that Tony Gwynn was so successful considering he played the steroid era.
Yeah, exactly. I was gonna say, Tony, there's a few people that no matter what, no matter the generation, no matter what, I think they would always be successful. Tony's one of them. Eddie Murray for the Orioles is another one. Jim Palmer's another one. There's guys that I don't think you can make an excuse for them. Like Cal
That's
Ripken
fair.
playing today, I don't know if he would be as successful. But there's a long list of people. Ricky Henderson obviously is one of them. I
Of course.
think
Yeah, well,
Ricky
it's
would
because he
do
played
even
like
better.
100 years.
I think Ricky would play even better if he was around today with all the social media and bat flips and everything. That really
That's
fits
fair.
his style.
Well, could you imagine, so Tony Gwynn playing today? There's no more shift. And I mean, he was good enough back then to beat the shift, but could you imagine, nowadays, where there really is no shift to even beat? We're
Yeah,
talking about a guy having a much better career. But then again, look at a guy like Albert Pujols and make his rookie year this year. He's probably going to get another 1,000 hits.
yeah. I always
Because,
hated the damn shift.
yeah, it definitely was very unfair for some guys. But all I ever heard was guys like, "Oh, just wait, Joey Gallo's going to do so much better when the shift's gone." I mean, his batting average got better by like 20 points. Great, good job, Joey
So,
Gallo.
so I will tell you though, the shift provided one of the stupidest matchups I've ever seen. 2019, Andy Green. I don't think he was the manager, but he was the acting manager for the night for the Cubs versus Tingler. All right.
Jason Tingler, one of the all-time
Tingler and the
best names.
Padres. Tingler and the Padres put in some stupid shift. It bit them right in the ass immediately. They're down, right? I'm thinking the game's over. They're going to the top of the ninth. There's no way Padres are going to have a comeback, right? What does Andy Green do? He out stupefies Tingleberry and puts 5 men in the infield. I have never seen something so stupid in my life. And of course, it took one pitch for that to bite the Cubs, and they ended up losing.
I went to opening day in 2018 in Oakland. That was Otani's first game as a pro. So I got to watch Otani's first career hit. So,
That's
I mean,
cool.
I'll always be able to say that. Um, so it was the bottom of the ninth. No, it was extra innings. It was like the 10th or 11th inning before that stupid ghost runner rule.
Oh
And
God.
Mike Scioscia had Justin Upton come from left field to be the fifth infielder. In all fairness, I think Oakland had bases loaded with like one out
Okay.
or so. So they wanted to put five infielders and then they had two outfielders. Um, so like Trout was playing left center and then Calhoun was playing like right center, and then they had Upton in fifth. And obviously they were trying to get a ground ball, but the guy who was batting, I don't know who it was for Oakland, popped it out to the outfield where Upton would have been. And I know everyone's like, oh, well, that was so stupid. But remember, it was one out with the runner on third. So
Right.
either
It didn't
way, they
matter.
would have won. The goal
Right.
was to keep the ball in the infield. So at least this wasn't one of those situations like, oh, you're so stupid, Scioscia. But that was the only time I've ever been at a game in person where I saw five infielders.
Was it Coco Crisp that hit it?
Yeah, no, I mean, this was 2018. It might have been like Rajay Davis or something.
I guess I wouldn't be too bad about that either.
Yeah, I mean, like
I
I
mean, I
said, it
know
was
you
like,
never want to see your team lose, but at least if it's to a
especially when I was
player
sitting in
that's decent
Oakland.
like that. Yeah.
I was
Yeah.
like suffering in Oakland.
Yeah.
The last time
Oh
I ever went
man.
to that stadium was that day. And I don't anticipate myself going this year. If this really is their last year.
Yeah.
So, all right, man. I mean, that's really what I have on it. I mean, I think we kind of given our villain origin stories as to why you became an Orioles fan. I became an Angels fan. It boils down to the same thing, right?
Yeah.
You know, back then the Padres and the Chargers seemingly had no loyalty to their stars. They weren't properly developing guys. And it's funny, what made me an Angels fan was the fact that they weren't afraid to spend money. And what I hated about the Padres is that it was all homegrown guys. And now I'm begging the Angels to stop spending money and start getting homegrown guys. The Orioles have seemingly done their rebuild the right way. They have a very young core. They have a new owner now. They just traded
Ah man.
for Corbin Burns of the Brewers, who was recently a Cy Young Award winner a couple of years ago. So, I mean, the future is bright for the Orioles, and the fact that now they have a new owner, perhaps maybe they'll actually retain some of these guys.
We'll see. I'm one of the few fans that actually really liked Peter Angelos, and I know he hasn't been in control. It's been his sons, but yeah, that's still a little bit heartbreaking to see it change hands. Hopefully it's for the best, but yeah, and like you say, we pretty much covered, but the last thing I'd add is also, man, the Padres did not give out good giveaways, and that shouldn't make or break your decision to follow a team or not. But
Yeah.
man, I remember opening day 2016, they gave portable chargers. We had 4 people from my group go. Not one of them worked by the second game. I'm not
That's
even kidding. It was
so
so
funny.
bad. It was so bad.
Yeah,
And
that's
they always just
hilarious.
had shit give outs. And then, the Orioles had their replica of Camden Yards that actually looked good and you could tell what it was. And people were able to turn around and sell that for like $300 because of how good it was.
You mean this?
Wow, nice. Nice.
Do you have one?
No, I don't have one. I do have the one at Petco though. You want to see how shitty that one looks?
You fixed yours, didn't you?
No.
I mean, I have this in my collection, but if you want it, I'll send it to you because I mean you're gonna appreciate
That's
it
like
more
a
than I will.
$300 thing there, buddy. I wouldn't just hand it out for free. I appreciate that, but
But yeah, but you're an Orioles fan. You know what I mean? Like that's the difference.
yeah, that's
I'll tell you
awesome
what,
though.
I'll incentivize you. Come visit. We'll go to a game and I will give this to you.
And it has the 25th anniversary patch on the bottom.
It does.
That's really nice, man.
Yeah, because
Yeah.
I told you I used to go to Baltimore once a month for work, and they had this little old school card shop, like the one that you and I used to go to in Claremont, but better because it was like double the size of that one, and they were selling this for I think like $16, and I was like, oh, Camden Yards, that's like my favorite stadium. I want it. I also got this authenticated Cal Ripken baseball up there. I showed it to you when we stopped
Oh
recording.
wow, nice.
So, but
So since you did
yeah,
that, I gotta grab this hat real fast.
okay, all right, fair enough.
So I went for opening day 25th anniversary, right? Went in the gift shop, bought the batting practice hat. This is what it looks like now. Got Chris Davis' signature on there. It was orange, and it was the old batting practice hat, but I just really liked it because it was so bright and orange. But they didn't have any 25th anniversary stuff, so my aunt and I got this patch and just sewed it onto the side of the hat. So I think it actually turned out good. But man, whenever you wear it, it's like flat on my head like this now. And then I saw the next week on the Facebook page, they had one with a little patch. I was like,
Yeah,
damn it, I should
of
have
course
charged
they
them
would.
for that.
Yeah, right. Of course they would. They'd wait for you to leave.
Bastards.
Yeah, right. All right. Well, guys, once again, thank you guys for listening. Make sure to subscribe. Make sure to like, comment down below on what you guys want us to cover next time. We promise to come at you the following week with more episodes. On behalf of William and myself, thank you so much for listening. And where can they find your new YouTube channel if they're interested?
Just William Canoli. It has a big W and red lettering.
Well, there you go.
Appreciate it.
If you guys want to follow him, he's going to do a lot of stuff with he does some custom what's it, GTA tracks and stuff like that.
Correct.
And he said he's also going to cover some sports stuff over there too, I believe, on your trailer you're talking about. So make sure to follow him over there as well. Thank you guys again and have a great rest of your day.